Okay, so we'll bring it off, and then I'll make this announcement. Okay.
Well, bring it off, and then you'll go for the remainder of the consent agenda.
Right.
And then you'll make
Okay. Okay, very good.
Good, yourself?
I'm good. Good to see you.
So is there any way to, you're the chairman, did you ever call for the police to come up and have your reviews?
No,
Way to back the police off?
we
It's happened twice now.
I think it's up to them. I don't direct them to do it or anything. I have,
Robert's Rules of Order said it's up to the chairman to order anybody removed or to sit down.
I'm not going to order them to do that.
Why does it have to come?
Experience in that area.
Good deal. Are you licensed?
My father is. I'm under the grandfather's
Oh,
license.
all right.
No. I'm grandfathered in. Thank you, sir.
Hey, how are you, Scott? Thank you. Okay, what all we got here tonight?
There's nothing going on.
Okay. I think we're probably about ready to go. Is Jim giving me the right to go?
Is your light on?
He doesn't use that anymore.
Oh, he doesn't?
Okay. Welcome, everybody, those of you who are here and those of you who are watching at home, to the St. Charles County Council meeting of March 2019. First on the agenda is invocation, and I'd like to ask if Mr. Elam will give the invocation for us, and then the Pledge of Allegiance will also be led by Mr. Elam.
Double duty.
Double duty. Please rise.
If you know of any pastors who would like to come pray for the council, we would love to invite them to come, and they can do this instead of me. But in the meantime, if you'll bow your head with us. Father, we just want to pause for a couple of minutes and acknowledge the gifts that we have all come from you. And we ask, Father, right now that you'll give us the wisdom that we need. We need it all the time, but at times like this, Father, there's a special dose that we would ask that you would give to us. We ask patience as we debate things. We know tempers sometimes can get pretty high, so we just ask that we all remain calm. We seek your judgment, we seek your will, and we come up with what is best for all concerned. We thank you for the things that you're going to do, and we commend this meeting into your spirit. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Councilmember Joe Cronin.
Here.
Councilmember Joe Brazel. Councilmember Mike Elam.
Here.
Councilmember John White.
Here.
Councilmember Dave Hammond.
Here.
Councilmember Terry Hollander.
Here.
Councilmember Mike Klinghammer.
Here.
Thank you. Tonight we have a public presentation. It's presented by the Honorable Judge Dan Pelican, and it'll be for the state of the 11th Judicial Circuit Court. Would you like to come forward, sir?
Greetings, Chairman White, members of the council, County Executive Ellman, County Administrator Lakem, and citizens of our great county. It's my great honor to be here at the invitation of Chairman White. We were chatting at the oath of office ceremony in December, and after congratulating me on my election as presiding judge for the county, he said to me he didn't know very much about the courts. I said, we'll have to do something about that. I said that was a good sign that you had never had to use them and that you probably weren't in very big trouble recently, like most of the people I see. We proceeded to talk about the courts as the third branch of government, or the quiet branch. You usually only hear about us if you're watching TV coverage of the U.S. Senate confirmation hearings, or if some of my rural brethren are mentioned in yet another column by Tony Messenger, the Post-Dispatch. At that point, I offered to come to the council meeting and present a short history of the St. Charles County third branch of government, the 11th Judicial Circuit. John wanted to know if I could do this in 10 minutes or less. I said, now you're asking too much, John. Remember, I'm a lawyer and a judge. But since one of my jobs is to keep the lawyers moving briskly in trial, I think I can get the job done. Our third branch of government was universally accepted at the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia. The founding fathers knew that for our government to last, the people had to have a healthy respect for the rule of law. In the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson listed the lack of a right to a jury trial and the lack of an independent judiciary, independent from the king or for their jobs and their salaries, as two of the many grievances against King George. In the words of Abraham Lincoln, law is nothing else but the best reason of wise men applied for ages to the transactions and business of mankind. Or in the more contemporary words of humorist Will Rogers, make crime pay, become a lawyer. When I greet the 60 or 70 citizens who arrive for their jury obligations on a Tuesday morning, I usually quiz them on their knowledge of and respect for the rule of law. They understand that that is what separates our great nation from second and third world countries. They find it comical when I ask them if any of them think that I'm taking a bribe, or if they would rather take justice into their own hands outside of the courthouse. They think it's funny. They think it's funny because to them, and it is comical to them, because their faith in the rule of law in this country and its courts is already ingrained in their hearts and minds. That's why they think it's funny to even suggest such a thing. We are here as judges in the St. Charles County 11th Judicial Circuit to resolve disputes, the criminal, civil, and family business of the county. We resolve disputes peaceably and thereby enhance the healthy respect of our citizens for the rule of law and by extension for their government. The 13 judges of this county, the 11th Judicial Circuit, resolve the divorces, help abused and neglected children find loving homes. We help delinquent children get back on track. We preside over criminal matters, sentence convicted criminals, manage probation for thousands of lawbreakers, many addicted to drugs who need a second chance. Judge Phil Ohms presides over one of the finest treatment courts in our nation for drug offenders, veterans, and the mentally ill. We resolve probate issues, small claims, adult abuse orders of protection, complicated civil matters like medical malpractice, products liability, condemnation matters, auto accidents, property disputes, and even cases involving our county charter and red light cameras. It's ironic that I'm giving this talk here in this council chambers because this is probably the very spot where Steve Ellman and I met about 1985 answering the call docket on a Friday morning called by one of the Judge Dalton brothers. This very spot. John, you're sitting in the judge's chair. We certainly have come a long way since then. That was the era when there was no court, no trials held in the summertime because there was no air conditioning. Those are the good old days. Our circuit was originally shared with Lincoln and Pike counties. It was so small. In those days, believe it or not, we all fit very well into this building. Our state is divided into 46 judicial circuits. Before 1991, like I said, Lincoln and Pike were a part of our circuit, and it was called the 11th. It's called a circuit because if I had this job over 100 years ago, I'd be riding to Lincoln and Pike and St. Charles counties on my horse to answer the call docket. In 1980, St. Charles had a population of approximately 140,000 people, with cases being handled by 4 circuit and 2 associate circuit judges. In 1991, we became a single circuit county. They split off Lincoln and Pike and made them the 45th because of our rapid growth. In 1993, our beautiful new courthouse was completed, and we filled it with 4 circuit judges and 3 associate circuit judges. The legislature kept adding judges as our population grew. Various family and drug court commissioners were added over time with the increases in population. In 2019, as we approach a population of 400,000, we have 6 circuit and 7 associate circuit judges. The legislature has added an additional associate circuit judge this year. Our newest addition is Judge Rebecca Navarro McKelvey. I think you've heard of her, who I'm very proud to state is the first Hispanic judge and first immigrant judge elected in St. Charles County. And I believe, I haven't confirmed this, but I believe that she's the only Hispanic immigrant conservative judge in the entire state of Missouri. Our current caseloads as a circuit are some of the highest in the state. The recent Missouri Supreme Court weighted workload study of the judiciary indicated that our circuit was deficient by over 3 judges due to our caseloads. Through the 2017 reporting year, we had case filings as follows: 29,116 total cases filed in all categories. In civil matters, 1,193 general civil circuit court cases. Those are cases involving an amount over $25,000. I handle those kind. 7,600 associate circuit cases. That's a value under $25,000. That's the bulk of the dispute resolution in our county. Small claims cases, creditors' rights cases, rent and possession cases, landlord-tenant. 305 small claims cases, 4,378 family court cases. In criminal matters, we had 1,517 circuit court felony cases, the kind I handle, 3,011 associate circuit felony cases, that's a felony that's eventually making its way up to me, 3,364 misdemeanor cases, 1,115 probate and estate cases, and 6,036 traffic, watercraft, and municipal appeals. Thanks to you creating the county municipal court, our traffic filings have been reduced substantially. That is a huge help. I appreciate that. However, the change in the state venue laws are keeping more of our large and time-consuming civil cases right here at home rather than in the city of St. Louis. The opioid crisis is very real, and we feel it every day. Of my criminal cases, over 75% of my criminal cases involve drugs, alcohol, and/or mental illness. A great percentage are opioid-related cases. And then the cases from those, the stealings, the forgeries, the counterfeit checks, and things like that. I have lost probably 5% of the people on my probation docket to overdoses. As we look to the future, the county will only continue to grow and get even better. The increase in population and resulting increase in case filings will bring natural challenges of space, security, and parking for our beautiful courts building, our employees, our jurors, and our citizens attempting to access the building. If we do nothing, we will very soon be out of office and courtroom space in the courthouse. There are some security concerns going forward with no secure entry for judges into the building. Our jurors and our courthouse employees at times have no place to park close to the courthouse if the St. Charles City Garage is full on a morning of a jury trial. There have been days when we've had multiple jury trials when over 200 jurors arrive at the same time and overwhelm downtown for parking spaces. When those jurors all come into the courthouse, there's no room large enough to hold them all, so we line them up out in the hallways. These are all minor growing pains and signs of a healthy and vibrant county growing out of its own skin. We continue to have discussions with Christine Ramsdell, Director of Facilities Management, Joanne Lakem, Director of Administration, Cheryl Crowder, our Circuit Clerk, and Roger Steele, our Director of IT, about options for future growth and more efficient use of our court building. I appreciate the cooperation of the county to work out these issues with us. It's gratifying to know that everyone in our county is working together as a team to maintain a safe workplace for our employees and ensure a positive experience for our citizens as they use the courts to resolve their disputes and serve on a jury. I want to thank you all again for inviting me to speak about the courts to you. I think I kept it close to 10 minutes, John. Please feel free to contact me anytime if you have any questions or if you'd like ringside seats to one of the many trials I have coming up in the coming months. We have some very interesting and some national recognition trials coming up. God bless our country, our courts, and all of you. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Pelican. I think we're very fortunate to have a court system in our county that is so professional and runs so smoothly. Thank you for your service. Moving on, we'll move on to conditional use permits.
Actually,
Bill
we have
Central.
another public presentation, the county executive.
Oh. I'm sorry. A report from Unity 2008 County Executive Elman. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge, thank you very much for being here tonight. Brought back old memories. We did start in this place. And you know, when we were young attorneys, we came here on Friday morning for the call docket, and we saw all these older gentlemen and ladies. And I don't know about you, I think you, like myself, realized that the attorneys in this town were the leaders, not in politics, in their churches, in their schools, in their various organizations. And you know, I don't think there's as many attorneys involved today the way you and I were. And I want to thank you for everything that you've done for the community. The judge has been real active in the Boy Scouts of America and several other organizations, so thank you. Now, having said that, I also need to correct you on your historical facts.
Probably
I
my
think-
history, right?
Yeah, I think Rebecca McKelvey, great judge, great person. I think she is the first immigrant to serve as a judge in St. Charles County.
Right.
But the first immigrant judge from St. Charles County was Arnold Krekel, who was appointed by Abraham Lincoln 2 days before he was assassinated in 1865, a German immigrant. Okay. Thanks again, Judge.
You knew the history was coming one way or the other, didn't you? You're going to get a
He
Bates
knew he
Krekel
was
letter
on
soon.
thin ice
There you
when he
go.
started doing the history, right? All right. As you all know, every year under the charter, I'm supposed to give you a state of the county. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to go through it pretty quickly. We have these slides. If any of you ever want to use them to go out in your district and make this presentation, they're certainly available. The judge talked about the opioid epidemic, and as you know, this year we filed a lawsuit against pharmaceutical manufacturers to recoup the money that taxpayers had to pay for police, for prosecutors, for judges to deal with that terrible situation. 301 deaths, 5% of the judge's probation docket. 301 deaths due to overdose in a 3-year period. These are just some of the costs which we're trying to recoup that the taxpayers have had to pay. I think one of our biggest accomplishments this year, and you all are very familiar with the CALEA accreditation. That was a 3-year process. Our police department and the people out there and the attorneys and Joanne, everybody worked very, very diligently to make this happen. And we're only the 8th law enforcement agency in the St. Louis area and the 13th in the state to receive that accreditation. I'm very proud of our department. You can see here some of the things. not only did you have to go ahead and do the procedures and write them down, but you had to prove that you were actually doing them. You know, a lot of times we do these studies and we put them on a shelf and never see them again. So this was a very important step forward for our police department. Technology, you know, all of us get a little frustrated sometimes with the cost of keeping up with the technology. But I think one of the reasons we have not had the large growth in the number of employees is because every one of our employees are so much more efficient now, given the fact that we've provided them with the technology to do their job quicker and better. The new Emergency Operations Center, very proud of that. All of you should be as well. And this was, you know, this was a project that you on the council were very involved in this from the very beginning. I mean, you went with us over to look at other buildings and had a lot of good ideas. And we want to thank you for making this happen. As you know, we had different things in different buildings. Now we've got the EOC, we've got data center, and we've got the various communications center all under one roof. That's going to open up space other places for more jail cells, for other county services that we'll be providing. Park openings. Mr. Klinghammer finally got a park in his district. Congratulations. Thank you. You've been working on that for several years. And we're going to make it a lot nicer as the years go on. But free access to Mississippi River. Remember last meeting we approved the contract for the Darden Creek Drainage District to go ahead and clean out Darden Creek, and hopefully we're going to get some canoes going back and forth between St. Peter's Park there at 370 and our park down on the Mississippi River. New Melly Lakes, again, this is one I wasn't that excited about, and basically I think it was the council that first decided this was a good idea, and I got to say that you all were right and I was not. I'm glad we did this. This was a great investment, and we've got a lot of great features out there now. We've got more coming in the future. And of course, Veterans Tribute Park. Some pictures from opening weekend. In the first 10 weeks, nearly 130,000 people visited. And I think there's going to be even more this spring. We got to get that grass growing a little better than we did last fall. I was disappointed. It's the only thing I was disappointed in. But we're going to have a lot of amenities out there, and as you know, most of our parks are out on the periphery. This is the one that's really in the neighborhoods, the unincorporated subdivisions of St. Charles County. This will serve them well, and I think it's great that we have this and that we have it at this site. I-61, or excuse me, US 61. This is it's Mr. Cronin's baby. How long ago did you first talk to us about this? At least 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, I think longer than that.
4 or 5 years, and there was some very tragic accidents out there, and basically came to us first, and we went and talked to Wentzville, and then all of us went and talked to MoDOT, and you can see that this was a joint project. We all contributed equal shares. Took a little bit longer than I had hoped, but there were some real challenges in the engineering. But that's a lot safer, and of course it's also going to help growth in that area. We put some additional lanes on Mid-Rivers Mall Drive. Again, you can see it was a joint project with St. Peter's and MoDOT. Route N environmental study, funded by us. Route N, I guess it's actually phase 4 of Page. People now are gonna say, why did you stop Page where you did? Because really, Highway N is going to be very busy road, and we need to make sure we handle that in the right way and do it in a way that's safe and also will encourage growth in that area. Gateway Green Light, again, we talk about this every year. I think 300 plus traffic signals that are on our system. You know, I end up at a stop sign, and if I'm sitting there for more than about 45 seconds, I call the next day and said, hey, what's the matter with that light? So awards and recognitions, a medical accredited Center of Excellence for the Department of Emergency Communications, one of 5 dispatching centers in the state with this international accreditation. Very proud of that. Department of Mental Health for the 9th consecutive year, one of the top ranked counties in terms of health. And a lot of that, of course, is, I think, due to our health department and the job that they do. And I want to thank them for that. But a lot of that's also due to our folks, our residents, who generally make some really good lifestyle decisions. And yes, we continue to have problems with alcoholism and drug abuse and all sorts of other problems, but not as many as some other places. And at least at this point, we have the resources to handle those problems. Community Development Award, you know, Mike and Robert, and you get him up here and grill him on questions and ask the really tough questions. But they've done a great job over the last few years, and they were finally recognized with this Community Development Award. Financials, okay. Well, so much for the good news. Financially, we're looking at some real challenges, and I know all of you know that. We need to make sure other people start understanding that. The increase in general fund revenue is just not keeping pace with the increase in operating costs. Sales tax up only 1.84% over 2017. And of course, our general fund property tax remains at 0. We've been able to continue to do some decent raises for our workers, but it's going to get harder and harder as this continues. And this is some information. You know, you all understand this, and I'm going to try and explain it for the folks at home, but, you know, we have a general fund, and about 64% of our budget is from that general fund. But the general fund gets 0 property tax, okay? And the general fund gets less than 1 cent of the sales tax that we collect, okay? So you know this. We have money available for parks, and we have money available for transportation projects, but it's the general fund that's a real challenge. And I think we all understand, at least I think, the most important thing we do is public safety, and we're going to have to deal with that issue. And here's just an example of what we're dealing with. The yellow line is the rate of sales tax growth. The blue line is the Dow Jones Index. And if you look at from 2007 till about 2015, they pretty much track each other. In other words, when the economy was bad, our sales tax collections would go down, the rate of growth. When the economy was good, they'd go up until about 2015. And the economy's been great, but sales tax has gone the opposite direction. And of course, we think a lot of that is due to e-commerce. The Supreme Court has dealt with that issue last year, and I guess we're waiting to see what our legislature does. But if those lines continue to diverge the way they are right now, we're going to have some real challenges. This is even more. This is looking at law enforcement costs, okay? And over that period, this is how law enforcement costs have gone up, and the sales tax growth has gone down. So we're going in the wrong direction, and again, you know, we all worked hard to get a good budget this year, and you know, we're going to do the best we can next year, but we're looking at a day somewhere down the line here where we're going to either have to cut services or get some more revenue. I think we all understand that. The biggest transportation challenge we have is the bottleneck out in Wentzville, okay? And, you know, we didn't worry about that quite as much a few years ago because only 17% of the people in the bottleneck are actually from St. Charles County. But what's happened now, as you all know, over the last 5 or 6, 7 years, we've got a lot of new logistics companies and a lot of new trucks and a lot of new traffic. And here we are, we're the gateway to the west. But if you're in St. Louis and you want to go west, you got to squeeze through that two lanes under the railroad bridge at Wentzville. So this is not just important for us, the county, in terms of safety and getting people home from work and to job in the morning. This, I think, is important to our economic development over the next several years. 364 and Gudermuth interchange, as we all know, we didn't get 100% of what we wanted on Phase 3 of Page. This was one of the things that we had to drop off the list to get under the $100,000 we had to spend. But this is going to be a big improvement and going to really open up a lot of new neighborhoods for people who want to use Phase 3 of Page. New ramps near Heritage Crossing on Route 364. Congratulations, John White. How long have you been working on this?
Several years.
And as you know, again, when they did Phase 2 of Page, or Phase 1, I guess, you never have enough money to do everything you want to do. And the people living in Heritage had to get off, what, 3 or 4 miles before they got to their house. So we're going to have another entrance and exit ramp that will allow them to stay on the highway till they get closer to their home. And this is something John has really encouraged us. And we've worked hard, but we finally got MoDOT to agree that this is a priority. Miggy Road is in the same neighborhood. Again, we have a divergent diamond interchange there. This is one of those things that it's going to take several years to finish, but we've got the money to do it now. The jail is 30 years old, which is hard to believe. And the people who know about jails, including our own director of corrections, say this jail is just a little bit too old, that shortly after this jail was built, they start building them a lot better. So we think there are some things we can do to make this jail last another 30 years. And we're going to be looking at those and coming to you with our proposals in the next year. 370 to upwards of 450, unless the judges decide to send us even more. So that's a little bit hard to predict. I will tell you, one of the things that bothers me is if you look at our jail population any given day, half the people in our jail aren't from St. Charles County. And that's what I think a lot of people don't understand, is a lot of the crime that's committed in St. Charles County is committed on the interstate highways, or it's committed by people who don't live here but commit crime here. So $110 per day. The state only gives us 30 to 85 per day, and that's only when inmates are sentenced. And we're going to be working on that issue too, and we'll be back to talk to you more about what we might be able to do on that. Parks development, locally grown league ball players of St. Charles County. Coach, we're going back, I think there's like 25 people from St. Charles County who have who've played in the major leagues, and we're gonna recognize all of them. But Mark Burley, who's from St. Charles, went to Francis Howell North High School, he's given us a lot of his memorabilia, which I think people are really going to enjoy. And of course, everything else out there right now at our Heritage Museum is sports and recreation in St. Charles County. So this is the last piece of that puzzle. And hopefully we're going to get that open before opening day. So look forward to that. Hayes Home will be opening. Veterans Memorial will be doing the actual tribute in November 2019. And Colleen, when I told her to prepare this, I told her you got to have at least one dog picture. Because people love their dogs and they really love our pet adoption center. Okay? Probably get more positive feedback from residents from that than anything else. That's all I have. And I think probably if you have any questions, it might be better to wait and give me a call in the morning, because I know you got a lot of work to do yet tonight.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Executive Elman. I've lived in St. Charles County almost all my adult life, and every year it seems like it gets better and better. But as County Executive Elman pointed out, we are going to have some challenges in the future. And I believe it's up to our citizens and local government to meet those challenges, so we hand over to future generations a continued wonderful St. Charles County. Saying that, we'll move on to conditional use permits and bills for introduction and public comment with bill number 4689.
Bill number 4689, requested by Michael Hurlbert, sponsored by Joe Brazel, an ordinance granting conditional use permit CUP 1818 for buildings, structures, or open spaces for conducting weddings and/or wedding receptions or other private parties to Robert G. Brinkman and Kim Brinkman, property owners.
With that, I'd like to call upon Robert Miles to come forward.
And do you solemnly swear that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And Robert, will you introduce the applicant?
I will. The applicants tonight are Robert and Kim Brinkman, and they have representation with Drew Weber.
Okay. And the findings of your...
Certainly. Very quickly, this application is a conditional use permit for building structures or open spaces for conducting weddings and/or wedding receptions or other private parties. It's located on Highway F at a site that you may know because it's been a visual landmark for many decades. But on Highway F, you may remember there's a stone barn. It's located on the north side of the roadway near Lindenwood Park. And that stone barn, according to the applicants, is one of the earliest buildings in St. Charles County and possibly in the state, constructed roughly 1810 in what used to be called the Bryant Mill. The Bryant Mill remains standing today and has long been converted to other uses, became a barn, and now it's been outfitted for holding events, and in the past has been used to host private events for the applicants, just their own private events or parties. And at this point, they would like, according to the applicants, to share this property and the history of it with others as well, and to conduct weddings or other private parties and wedding receptions at this location, to include not only the historic barn, but also the 1840s stone house, and as well as some other ancillary uses on the property as well. They intend to hold weddings both indoors and outdoors, and they intend to use the historic barn structure for events. There's not going to be a restaurant or bar added to it. It's just going to be a meeting space, but it would have food and drinks that would be catered. Let's see. And just to let you know, one of the proposed conditions has to do with the limitation on the number of people that could be assembled at these events, and that is tied to the building code and the fact that there's no water mains here, there's no fire hydrants, and they're not proposing to put in sprinklers. So because of that, the building codes have classified this as a certain use, and there's a maximum number of people that's should be allowed under the building code, and that's reflected in the proposed conditions that are before you in this draft bill. As you know, conditional use permits are reviewed under the criteria of Section 405.510B of the County Code in terms of impacts and land use impacts on neighbors. The Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed the potential impacts. They took testimony from neighbors and also from the applicants themselves. One thing of note is that the applicants have provided a sound study that's part of your packet and is part of the record as well, where acoustical engineer did review sound at 85 decibels played inside the barn structure, both with doors open and with doors closed, and found that at 500 feet away from that structure, even if the doors would be open, that it would not exceed the sound limits that are currently enacted by St. Charles County in terms of sound limits for amplified sound. For reference, the nearest house is about 900 feet away. There is a residential subdivision to the north, a little over 2,000 feet away, and that's, again, for reference. The Planning and Zoning Commission, following the public hearing, recommended approval subject to certain conditions, and they, including a condition prohibiting fireworks displays at any of the events associated with the weddings or other private parties on the property. And the applicants indicated verbally at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting that they would agree to that. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Council, have any questions of staff? Seeing none, Mr. Myers, will you introduce the applicant?
I would. I'd like to introduce, Robert Brinkman, Kim Brinkman, and Drew Weber. And looks like Mr. Brinkman is coming forward, so. Sure.
Mr. Brinkman, do you solemnly swear that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Mr. Brinkman, that clicks forward, okay?
Okay. County Executive Elman, council members, my name is Bob Brinkman, and my wife's back there. Go ahead and wave, hon. And we're here requesting a conditional use permit for this wonderful building that we all have here. And I want to give you a flavor for this because maybe some of you haven't been in here. But this is the Westlers who got married in 1915. This lady was born in our living room in 1896. They used it for farming, but I'm going to go back a second. I think we're missing some of my slides at the beginning. First thing I want to tell you is Danny Boone got here in 1799. He was 65. We all know what that's like. And he was kind of kicked out of Kentucky. He was a land surveyor, but it's hard to do when you're being shot at by Indians. So there were some land problems down there. So he was on his way back to Pennsylvania, and his son, Daniel Morgan Boone, lived basically where Sugar Creek Winery is now. It was up on Manson Hill. And they built the first fort in St. Charles County up there. And the Boones raised 20 children, 10 of their own, 10 adopted. 6 of the adopted children was the Bryan family, and Daniel's wife was Rebecca Bryan Boone. So her sister was killed, and they adopted those kids. So Danny Boone gets here in the fall of '99, and he was told, if you come, an arpents of property, which is 850 acres. And all that ground is down in the Dorse bottom. Dorse was one of the people he brought out here. And everybody got a piece of ground except Nathan Boone, because he was 18. And 2 days out, he said, Dad, I got to go back and marry that Van Bibber girl. So he went back and married the Van Bibber girl, and you all now own the Van Bibber building in the park down there. And so he came back, and the story goes that him and his brother took Daniel's horse up here to town and traded it with a guy named Robert Hall. So the Boone property, as we know it, was really Nathan Boone's property. So on Christmas Day of 1800, Jonathan Bryan came here. Very early family. In fact, your Bryan Road is named after his granddaughter, first high school teacher in St. Charles County. And they came and they had stones, and they thought they would turn those stones on Femme Osage Creek. Well, that didn't work out for them so well. So they commenced to building the barn in 1801 and up to 1809. Actually started that before Nathan started his house. It shows you how important it was. Can you imagine what the Osage thought when they saw that going up? So it was a grist mill until 1880. And about that time, it was converted to a barn. It was in total disrepair. There was a doctor about 40 years ago that came in, and all the buildings in Boone Village were actually set up on this property. There were 18 buildings there. And Linden Wood is responsible for saving that barn. They put a roof on there years ago. But it had not changed for 206 years when we walked in there in 2012. So that eventually went to the Fuchs family, F-U-C-H-S. They're all buried in Mark Prager's backyard over there up on the hill. And the Fuchs sold it to Alvin Wessler. And the house is relatively new. It's 1843, built by 24 slaves who lived in the basement. Very deep foundation down there. This is Kermit Wessler in 1940. He came and visited us a couple years ago, and this is how we got all these photos of him and his grandmas and his mother here. And his claim to fame was he snuck across the Boone Bridge in 1940 before he opened it. So this is the barn over the years. 1880, when we got there, none of the columns touched the floor. The floor had not changed since Daniel Boone had walked out of there. If you're interested in Vimeo, go to Bryan Mill Femme Osage. There's a half-hour video of when we opened it up. One of the interpreters at the Boone home said in 1806, this was the computer. All the information available came in here, and all the information available left here. So you can see how in disrepair. You can see the roof was not on there. That's actually 1988. A friend found that calendar for me just a couple weeks ago, and we put that in there. So this is what it was like when we got there. We gutted it and the house. None of the columns hit the floor. We put in a concrete floor, jacked the whole building up, and you can see the rocks that were there, and we fixed all those columns in there. So we bought it in 2012. We moved out here knowing that we weren't necessarily going to land there, but look for other property, and that worked out relatively well for us. We bought 600 acres next door from Lindenwood, and our house is being built there, so we will be a neighbor to this facility. So we've entertained a lot there. People drive in all the time asking if they can get married there, so why not let them get married there? So that's what we're requesting the use to be. As mentioned, we did a sound study because these neighbors are still my neighbors. They're all good friends of ours. And we wanted to make sure that that was not a problem. The sound study that you have actually ran the sound at 85 decibels. There is no way that the sound is ever that high in that barn. You couldn't stand to be in there. And at that, it was 35 at the roadway, which was a little bit quieter than a car going by. So roughly about 40 to 50 in there. So that's what we've done. You can see we put stone floors, all walnut doors. The building did not have one door or one window in it for 206 years, mainly because of the dust. They didn't want the dust had to get out of there or to blow up. But it was converted to a barn in 1880. And as you can see, we've actually lived there for about the last 7 years, over 70% of our time. We never go home. I haven't been home since November, and that's when I voted. And that was in St. Albans. But we expect in the next 30 days to move into our new home right next door there. Any questions?
Any questions of applicant or staff?
The truck goes with the wedding venue. It's a 39 Studebaker. It's really cool. We have apple butter there every year. We've raised a lot of money for the St. Louis Police Foundation. I'm on the board there. We sell dinners there. We've had a few weddings there. That was our pastor from Windsor Crossings wedding. And it's just, the best part of stuff, people always say, this is such a great place. I always tell, the best part of owning that place is sharing it with everybody else. And we are in the neighborhood forever now. The property we bought was my great-great-grandpa's, which the house, if you go get married at the Boone home and change into your gown, that was my great-great-grandma's house. So we're right across the street. We're not going anywhere else. And we just want to celebrate Daniel Boone. We're the only state that does not celebrate the fact that he lived here. And he lived here 20 years, only 17 years in Kentucky. If he had dinner in Pennsylvania, somebody's got a sign up over there. But we don't celebrate him. But we're just pleased as punch to have been delivered to this site. And my wife says we had an unlimited budget and we exceeded it. But, you know what? It'll be there forever. And we just want to share it with everybody else.
Very good. Thank you.
Mr.
We'll
Chairman.
move on into public comment, and now we open.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I apologize for warning you that there was somebody in the room that loved history more than I did.
Well, I wanted to comment, me talking about history is like bringing sand to the beach with Mr. Oman in the room.
Oh. Very good. Like I said, we'll open it up for public comment. Any individual supporting or opposing this application is now invited to share their comments with the council. Council staff will call forward one at a time. Each speaker has submitted a speaker card. Upon the conclusion of individuals' comments, please remain at the podium, and if there's any questions to be asked of you. We encourage you to keep your comments to 3 minutes, and should another speaker have shared the same information already, feel free to come forward and just say ditto, and the record will reflect that you share the same opinion already stated. So can you call forward any speakers?
Graham Garvey.
Do you solemnly swear that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. My name is Graham Garvey, Dr. Graham Garvey. I'm a PhD in biochemistry. I make plants taste better, kind of a fun profession. I really don't want to be here tonight. I think if sensible limitations had been applied from the outset, then there'd be no reason for me to need to be here talking to you. So I will do my best to be brief, to be concise, and to clarify that I don't want to block the Brinkmans from opening this venue. Overall, it could be a value for the community. But I want to make sure that the way it's run and operated won't be injurious to my property, to my neighbor's property. And I don't know if you've seen, but there have been multiple letters submitted to the Planning and Zoning Commission at the early stages. Many of those neighbors, when I talked with them, they simply said, I support what Graham is saying. One of those neighbors was Leo Fuchs, whose wife, Candace Staringer, is the closest home. And the letter that was submitted, Mr. Fuchs shared with me, and it basically says what Graham says. We're concerned about noise, traffic, etc. And so I submitted and prepared a whole bunch of figures, and I don't have it as a PowerPoint to share with you. I have slides that I prepared, but they should have been in the packet that you had. And I think one of the first things that the residents were concerned about is how alcohol will be administered at this property. Okay, so I'm going to start from safety and move to the less concerns. There's no public comment period for alcohol licenses in the way it's administered for a rural section. And why is this of a concern? And the reality is, for us, it's a concern because Highway F is a windy road with blind corners. It has a 200% higher accident rate than the adjoining 94 from D to F. Why should that matter? Because we're going to be dealing with up to a 40% increase in traffic. Sorry. Thank you. There's going to be a 48% traffic increase if the max occupancy of 171 vehicles transit to and from this venue. There's only 750 cars, and that means 750 one-way trips down the stretch of Highway F that leads from 94 to the Brinkman's venue. This was one of the #1 concerns by the rest of the residents, and it's mine as well, because those residents that aren't going down 94 towards Defiance are going to head up towards New Melle. And when they head to New Melle, they're going to pass by the front of my subdivision where I live, and my 4 children, who will be drivers soon, will be transiting. Out of order. You heard about the request for a restriction on fireworks, and the Brinkmans have stated at the Planning and Zoning meeting that they would agree to this limitation. I want to make you aware of what the terrain is like around and up to the north from the Brinkmans property where my home resides. It's very wooded, it's dense, and the #1 concern for fireworks would be that that smoldering debris would drift onto our property. I didn't know anything about this stuff before I started on understanding this application and what the risks could be to my home. I had no idea, but what I learned was those fireworks displays are beautiful, but those smoldering remains travel a long ways in a mild wind. And what I've shown here is the distance that you can expect that smoldering debris to travel is about 3 times the safe limit that is required for setting up a display. So in a wooded area like this property, we strongly advocate that you uphold this limitation that was recommended by the commission, and then the Brinkmans verbally said they would be okay with. I'm going to switch gears and talk. Sorry, I skipped over one of my more important points on the alcohol. Why are we asking for limitations on alcohol? At the last meeting, there was questions asked about this, and the way that the residents had advocated that we have sensible alcohol limitations applied was that we wanted to have different approaches were recommended. One was a 7th inning style rule, where you would limit the sale of alcohol prior to the event ending. This gives people a little bit of time to sober up before they head out. Because this is going to be administered with caterers potentially providing the alcohol at this venue, there's going to be a highly variable level of training by those caterers when they show up, and if those staff are the ones serving the alcohol, they may or may not be trained very well to limit the alcohol sale or cut people off if they get too drunk. The alcohol problem was asked, is there a problem with alcohol in the region? And there was no clarity. I was really glad to hear the judge talk today about alcohol, opioids are a problem in the region. Alcohol DUIs, DWIs in the region have shown a trend where they tick up in our locale whenever a new winery is opened. I had no idea where to go for this information. I called the county police. I called the county prosecutor. When I had spoken with the planning and zoning, they didn't have this information. So I had to pull this together from sunshine requests and try to understand, you know, when a new venue opens up, is there a problem to the surrounding community? Previous statements at the planning and zoning said there was no, they were unaware of any issues. But what I've also learned is there's no tracking back from the number of DUIs that get associated to where people were served. So this is a gap in our system, and it's a gap in how we could understand, are people doing a good job in making sure they're sober before they get in the car? We'd like to see some limitations placed that separate when the alcohol is stopped serving from when the venue closes and people are turned out. I have one more statement on that, sorry. This would also be in line with the way alcohol is administered at resorts, or it's at least the way it's described in the alcohol legislation. Guests who are not spending the night at a resort get cut off earlier than those that have an overnight accommodation. The ballparks cut people off at the 7th inning. And similarly, other venues in the area, to be consistent with what goes on at the other venues, when I called around to find out how these venues handle the service of alcohol, Defiance Ridge was very candid. They cut the alcohol off 30 minutes before the venue closes. So this wouldn't be unique in the way that alcohol is administered at other facilities by imposing and requesting a 7th inning limitation. I'm way out of order. Okay. I want to move on to one of the other requests that we had, in which the Brinkmans stated that they are okay with not having outdoor amplified music, and there is a limitation proposed to limit this outdoor amplified music. I was reassured to see the Brinkmans had conducted a sound study. What also concerns me, unfortunately, is the way and the consistency of language around how the rules are interpreted. And I heard it tonight again about the residence, the distance from the venue to the residence. The county ordinances are really clear. It's the sound levels at your property line. You don't own the property between my house and your property. And so in the sound study, I had to get out and amplify the figures that were presented in the sound study. And to be honest, this is the first opportunity I've had to ask any questions of how that sound study was conducted, because it wasn't available to us before the meeting. I was handed a copy during the meeting. I've read it, I've studied it. I've called the people who put together the instruments that were used, the people who put together the sound map software. 85 decibels indoors, it can be mitigated. It won't be a big challenge if that's the only music amplified that's allowed at the venue. Again, we don't want to block them. We simply want to make sure that the way the limitations are applied don't infringe upon our enjoyment, our property values. So as you can see, the music will cascade across the property lines. These property lines, I don't know if the Brinkmans own the property across the street, but there's a significant spillover of amplified music. We want to be consistent with talking about the distance to the property. If we don't have outdoor amplified music, I would be okay with that limitation, and I think that's the right, responsible thing to do. I detailed in one of the letters that I sent into the Planning and Zoning Commission that the increase of noise can be quantified. It can be measured with a decibel meter. That's the instrument that was utilized by the engineering firm that did the sound study. That sound study confirmed nicely that yes, the music will spread over the property lines. You have to be aware of this. It isn't the distance to the nearest house, which would be Candace Starringer's. That home, again, Leo Fuchs submitted a letter on his and his sister's behalf, objecting and wanting to make sure that we have sensible limits placed on this venue. With that, I want to thank you for your time. Again, I want to state we're not here to block, but to make sure that the limitations that you do impose on this facility are done in a way that is sensible and protects us from risks, injury, damage, or property value. Sorry. Yes, thank you.
Please stay at the podium, sir. Council, you have any questions of this speaker?
I have a question. How far is your house or property from this?
My property is about 1,700 feet up the hill, which is interesting because trees should buffer, but their sound engineer stated quite clearly that trees are a poor buffer. The MoDOT transportation website states quite clearly as well, trees and berms are not an effective buffer. And under certain conditions, surprisingly, till you think about the physics of it, with the right soil type, sound doesn't attenuate through trees. It actually can be amplified out to 1,000 feet. And I had submitted figures and the federally funded studies that supported that statement.
Thank you.
Any other questions, council?
Question, sir. Are you at number 11 Sunfish?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
1,726 feet, I think, if you look at it, but my property line is obviously closer.
I was looking at that and just trying to get an idea because it looks like, from your question where you said, I don't know if he owns the property across the street. Investors of America own the property across the street, but there is nothing but huge pieces of land. There's no buildings that I see. I guess there is one.
Candace Starringer is to the southeast.
Right, there is an abandoned barn right across the street from where she's at, from where the property line is. So I'm guessing the barn's not going to care, but I was just trying to figure out where the rest of the folks were, kind of looking at a map here and trying to figure it out. So thank you.
Does the applicant have any questions of the speaker? Seeing none, you may be excused. Thank you, sir. Next speaker?
Arnie Dienhoff.
Do you solemnly swear that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Arnie C. A.C. Dienoff, public advocate and resident. I testified at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, and there's a number of issues and conditions that I'd like added to this applicant's application. It's a fantastic jewel and a fantastic property. I applaud the Brinkmans for everything that they've done to restore the property and bring history alive here in St. Charles County, especially the southern part. However, there needs to be protections for all of our residents, not just the Brinkmans, but all of our 430,000 Good County residents. Number one that was discussed was to limit the people load limit to 200 people. I don't know if that ever made that to the conditions of the application or not by the planning and community development staff. I'd like to see that we add a condition to cut off alcohol consumption 30 minutes before the closing time. And that brings up another issue about closing time. We treat different businesses differently, not on an even keel playing field, but differently in our wine district. Some of the facilities in the wine district have a 10 o'clock closing time. Some have 10:30, some have 11 o'clock. We need to make sure that we're not discriminating against any businesses or playing favoritism or giving free passes to special considerations of applicants. We need to ensure that we're treating all the applicants on the same plateau and the same even keel playing field. So I ask that you place a condition on this property of 10 o'clock of the closing of any ceremonies, parties, or get-togethers. I ask that, as in other applicants, require a decibel or Geiger meter be put and placed in 2 or 3 places at the property line. To ensure that the outdoor amplification is within county codified code and that the indoor amplification is also in county code. Also, that there's a time and place on both indoor amplification and outdoor amplification. You have the same limit on other people who have come before this commission in the last 6 months and the past 2 years. There was a noise study submitted the same night as Planning and Zoning Commission in the middle of February. And those commissioners and staff did not have a chance to read, digest, and look at that study. There were violations of Chapter 610, our open meetings, and our Sunshine Act that required that they be given a fair, I believe it's 4 or 5 days before the meeting time for everybody to be on the same page. Our commissioners didn't have that option to read and understand that noise study, and I have a problem with that. Parking, it kind of was discussed the last meeting, and I think that they're going to add parking. There were concerns that the 200 load limit with the 52 parking spots would not be adequate, but I understand they're going to be adding 75 or 100 additional parking spaces. I'd like to see a condition, which I haven't seen in this county council packet, that no shooting of firearms or live rounds on the property. That was agreed to by the Brinkmans and their attorney, and I asked that it be put in writing. On January 7th, 2019, Rick Massey, Fire Protection District Chief of the New Melly Fire Protection District, sent a letter to the Planning and Zoning staff and the Planning and Zoning commissioners. He asked that any fireworks be limited to 1.4 G or a Class C. He stated that there are no public fire hydrants near this site. There's a lot of brush, innavigable terrain, and there's steep grades on this property. There'd be shuttling of water and brush trucks that would have to come to this property, and they couldn't get ample access if there would be a fire due to the fireworks displays. So I asked that a condition be added by staff to take on this concern, especially when the Brinkmans and their attorney have suggested or agreed to not use any fireworks. And the final item that I'd like to talk about, this is just an ever-growing wine district that we have. We are known world-renowned for this wine district. It's growing each and every year. We need to get somebody in the county police command staff to come up with a plan to properly enforce needed patrols and make this a special precinct. Dedicated patrols only to this wine district, especially on heavy uses on the weekends and during the summer months. The terrain, the highways, there needs to be special patrols because of the traffic, safety, drinking and driving, and the terrain, or I'm sorry, the travel speed. So this also needs to be jointly done with the Missouri Highway Patrol. As we all know, Highway 94 is a state highway. But it's about time that our county police dedicate more personnel, more services, more patrols down there. I've been down there many times and you hardly ever see any county police, if at all. And so we need that dedication to ensure public safety, health, and welfare, which is your #1 priority and obligation. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Stay at the podium. Any questions from the council of this speaker? Seeing none, does the applicant have any questions of this speaker? Seeing none, you may be excused.
Thank you.
Are there any other speakers?
Not on the CUP, no. We're finished.
No? Well, then this concludes the public comment portion of this conditional use permit. We'll move on to other business.
Public comments. And we do have a speaker, Brad Hildebrand.
I got invited to a party in June of 2016. Matter of fact, it was a fundraiser for an out-of-state governor. And it was at a very nice house in the Central West End. So I showed up and had a great time. Met a guy by the name of Mark Cox, who at the time was an alderman in Wildwood. And I started kidding Mark about the fact that he should be moving into St. Charles County. Move that Wildwood into St. Charles County. And he started laughing, oh, we're fine where we're at. Flash forward to January of 2019. I get a call from Mark Cox. Hey, let's talk about that moving into St. Charles County thing. Mark Cox is a former TV reporter. He's on 97.1 in the morning. And him and I had a nice discussion. That's when I came up with my website, which I was here a couple weeks about, talked about, called betterstcharlescounty.com. The Better Together proposal is going to happen, and to the point where if it goes toward the state, it will pass. I'm assured of that because of the fact that the muscle and the money behind it. They get the signatures, they'll pay the dollars for it. They have $35,000 or $35 million to promote this to around the state, and they have the infrastructure. If you've ever heard of Pelopidas or First Rule, you know what I'm talking about. I'd be more than happy to explain to you what that's about as well, too. And they're paying top talent. Matter of fact, 2 weeks ago, one of the top talent was here, John Hancock. Now, let's look at this as a business opportunity. And it's interesting because County Executive Ellman talked about a lack of income tax. St. Charles County would be great with Chesterfield. Imagine all that income tax, excuse me, the sales tax coming in from Wildwood and especially Chesterfield into St. Charles County. And give you the little statistics here. Chesterfield County, Chesterfield right now is 50,000 residents. Median household income is $95,000. Wildwood, 40,000 residents. Median income, $125,000. All that combines to make St. Charles County even better with 2 more municipalities. Now, Mr. Brazel's resolution 1901, I think, is a start. What we need to do is we need to actively pursue a relationship with Chesterfield and Wildwood. We need to form a group to figure out what can legally be done to merge or annex Chesterfield and Wildwood and set a firm deadline. And remember one thing, this is all about regionalism. They keep talking about regionalism. If you read the Better Together proposal, regionalism's all over it. If Better Together is successful, who says the collar counties of Jefferson, Franklin, and St. Charles County aren't next? Now, back to the event, June 2016. Who did I get invited by? Tim Jones, who is now works for First Rule, former state speaker, and is very much involved in this, and is pro Better Together. Whose house was it at? Rex Singfield's house, who I met for the first time. And who was the out-of-state governor who I met, who was the fundraiser for? Mike Pence. So it was an interesting night for me because I actually talked for about 5 minutes with the future Vice President of the United States. I'm saying let's make March 11th of 2019 a night that we will move forward and pursue Wildwood and Chesterfield.
Mr.
Thank
Chairman,
you so
the
much.
3 minutes are up.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Arnie Dienoff.
Thank you very much, members of the County Council. My name is Arnie C. A.C. Dienoff, public advocate and resident. First of all, on the consent agenda, we don't have local county purchases, unfortunately, but we need to start buying trucks and backhoes and needed parks equipment right here in St. Charles County, supporting our neighbors, rather than buying it halfway across the state. On your agenda, also in the consent, is county appointment process. We have unfair rules of service that, I've been waiting for 10 years to be appointed to a board or commission by the county executive. Unfortunately, he has a policy, pay to play for appointments. He wants rubber stampers and puppets on a string, just like the county ambulance board or the county road board, that he can just pull on a string and tell them how to vote. Yes, they're mostly men and very few women on these county boards and commissions. Let's start getting some women on these commissions, Mr. County Executive. Now moving to the judicial items and considerations of the judicial court. Access to information and court documents is our sunshine law needs to be complied with. We need to stop sealing cases and information of county elected office holders in the courts, associated circuit judges, the county prosecutor, members of the county executive's family. We need to stop making criminal cases, drug cases, traffic cases go away and are being dismissed and sealed by the court of family members and friends of county elected and appointed officials. We need to stop the acts of hiring and doling out political patronage positions in the county circuit courts and our county municipal court system. We need the cost of printing the court documents. Chapter 610 is very clear, states 10 cents. But unfortunately, the chief judge left. He feels that he can charge 25 cents in violation of Missouri state law is illegal practice of the Sunshine Law. Increase public safety of our checkpoint. We need to install bulletproof glass, the safety of our security officers, and enhancement to protect the security officers, bailiffs, and the public at the court building. The judge's microphone, unfortunately, they turn them off sometimes, and it's hard to hear adequately and clearly hear judges and understanding their proceedings. So we need a better microphone system. Not allowing the circuit or associate circuit judges from saying disparaging remarks against members of the audience to witnesses in an open public courtroom is just wrong, unethical, and unprofessional. The chief judge did that one time that I saw. Not utilizing and allowing the county jail to be used like a torture cash cow for the county budget. Unfortunately, we keep people locked up over issues that are in violation of Senate Bill 5 and our judicial courts, the judicial laws of our state statute, to supplement the county budget. And I think it's wrong and insane for a non-moving violation, traffic violation, for somebody to be locked up in our county jail for weeks upon weeks because they
Mr.
can't
Chairman,
meet-
the 3
meet
minutes
bail.
are up.
Thank you,
sir.
Thank you.
Any other?
No.
Okay. Moving on to the county executive comments. Do you have anything to bring before?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Then we'll go on to the consent agenda. Any
Chairman.
items being removed?
Yeah, I'd like to remove the Parks Department bid for the tractor and loader.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of removing that item?
Aye.
Okay, so be it. We'll move on with the rest of the consent agenda.
Motion to approve is amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, seeing the consent agenda has been approved, we'll move on to,
We have that, we pulled off Parks and Recreation.
oh, yeah.
Do we need to table that?
No, I think we do. There's a math error in that, and I think that related to this bid, and the administration is going to withdraw it and will submit it in the March 25th meeting. Very good.
Okay.
All right.
We'll add it up again.
We'll add it up.
Okay, resolution number 19-01.
Are you going to remove that from the table?
No, we're not going to remove that from the table. Sorry.
That's all right.
Move on to bills for final passage, beginning with bill number 4686.
Do I not have 4686? Bill number 4686, an ordinance amending the 2019 budget adopted as ordinance 18-117 by transferring unencumbered appropriations between categories in the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force Fund to fund the cost of a new computer server for the cybercrime unit.
Any questions or comments on bill 4686? Seeing none, will you read the bill and call roll?
An ordinance amending the 2019 budget adopted as ordinance 18-117 by transferring unencumbered appropriations between categories in the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force Fund to fund the cost of a new computer server for the Cybercrime Unit. Councilmember Cronin, Councilmember Brazel, Councilmember Elam,
Yes.
Councilmember White.
Yes.
Councilmember Hammond.
Yes.
Councilmember Hollander.
Yes.
Councilmember Klinghammer.
Yes.
Bill 4686 is passed, and we'll move on to Bill 4687.
Bill number 4687, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute an amended memorandum of understanding between the County of St. Charles on behalf of the Police Department and the United States Marshals Service regarding the Police Department's participation in the Violent Offenders Task Force.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, read the bill and call the roll.
An ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute an amended memorandum of understanding between the County of St. Charles on behalf of the Police Department and the United States Marshals Service regarding the Police Department's participation in the Violent Offender Task Force. Councilmember Brazel? Councilmember Elam?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Hammond?
Yes.
Councilmember Hollander?
Yes.
Councilmember Klinghammer?
Yes.
Councilmember Cronin?
Yes.
Bill 4687 is passed, and we'll move on to 4688.
Bill number 4688, an ordinance amending the 2019 budget adopted as ordinance 18-117 by making a supplemental appropriation to the Cybercrime Unit, Police Criminal Investigations Division in the amount of $7,500 for the purpose of funding the purchase of miscellaneous equipment and supplies for the Cybercrime Unit.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, read the bill and call the roll.
An ordinance amending the 2019 budget adopted as ordinance 18-117 by making a supplemental appropriation to the Cybercrime Unit, Police Criminal Investigations Division in the amount of $7,500 for the purpose of funding the purchase of miscellaneous equipment and supplies for the Cybercrime Unit. Councilmember Elam?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Hammond?
Yes.
Councilmember Hollander?
Yes.
Councilmember Klinghammer?
Yes.
Councilmember Cronin?
Yes.
Councilmember Brazel?
Bill number 4688 is passed, and we move on to bills for introduction, beginning with Bill 4690.
Bill number 4690, requested by Michael Herbert, sponsored by Joe Brazel, an ordinance amending the zoning district map of the County of St. Charles, Missouri by rezoning land from A Agricultural District to RR Single Family Residential District as per application RZ 18-12.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll move forward to 4691.
Bill number 4691, requested by St. Charles County Planning and Zoning Commission, sponsored by council as a whole, an ordinance amending sections 405.510.d and 405.535.b of the ordinances of St. Charles County, Missouri, OSCCMO, the Unified Development Ordinance, UDO, relating to notification requirements for properties subject to rezoning and conditional use permit application and approval processes.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to 4692.
Bill number 4692, requested by Jeff Smith, sponsored by John White, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute an East-West Gateway Council of Governmental Financial Assistance subaward agreement for microwave router upgrades at St. Charles County sites.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll move to 4693.
Bill number 4693, requested by Dave Todd, sponsored by John White, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute an agreement with the Missouri Department of Public Safety to deploy one or more members of the Division of Emergency Management to the Communications Unit.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to Bill 4694.
Bill number 4694, requested by Bob Schnur, sponsored by council as a whole, an ordinance authorizing the non-binding projected tax rates of the county for the General Revenue Fund and for various special funds of and for the County of St. Charles, Missouri, for the year 2019 in order to develop the notice of projected tax liability to accompany the assessor's notice of assessed value, all as mandated by Senate Bill 711, 2008.
Any questions or comments?
I have a question. The limitations that we have where these rates are all going down because they have to be down, this is probably a question for Bob. Is that by the structure of the tax when it was passed by the voters, or is that due to the Hancock Amendment? Okay.
Hancock Amendment really is what governs here. The fact that we're prohibited to reap a windfall anytime assessed value goes up and market values go up. So as your assessed value goes up, there, in calculating the tax rate, you have to keep the essential base, if you will, revenue neutral. We can, in calculating our tax rates, we can recognize new revenue for new construction, and there's a cost of living adjustment that the Office of Administration generally releases every year that is an allowance to increase your revenues by also. But as far as your, all things being equal, the same real estate from one assessment year to the next, if the tax rate or if the assessed value goes up, then you have to throttle your tax rate back a little bit to stay revenue neutral, and that's what we're seeing here.
So I'm pretty sure it's the same Mr. Hancock that was in here lobbying for Better Together, put that amendment on there that's cutting our funds and funding back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And I think it's unfortunate because I think most citizens in this county wouldn't really want their road and bridge fund reduced because they realize their need for roads in this county, but we're forced to do that by amendment that Mr. Hancock put in place, what, 30 years ago?
Well, it only keeps us revenue neutral from the standpoint of we don't see any new revenue from increased market values, but we do get increased revenues for new construction and that cost of living. But yeah, you have to reduce your rate for the increase in.
But there's no inflationary clause in that Hancock amendment either, right?
Well, then that's the cost of living adjustment. The cost of living adjustment allows you to have a revenue increase as well as new construction that comes into your jurisdiction.
Okay. But maybe, tapping on to what Mr. Allen was speaking before, I mean, that limitation is going to start crimping what we can do for services in this county, okay?
Correct.
And I think that's unfortunate. So make sure I'll remind Mr. Hancock of that should he show back up in the council chambers. Okay.
Yeah. Mr. Cronin, it wasn't actually John Hancock who did that. It was a gentleman out of the Springfield area named Mel Hancock, and he's deceased now.
Okay. Thank you.
I think John was a freshman in high school.
Okay. I'll give John a pass on that one then.
I'm sure he'd love to take credit for it, though, if you want to throw that out there.
Any other questions, gentlemen? Seeing none, we'll move to Bill 4695.
Bill number 4695, requested by Steve Ellman and Samantha Shadrock, sponsored by council as a whole, an ordinance repealing in its entirety Section 115.130, harassment policy of the ordinances of St. Charles County, Missouri, OSCCMO, and enacting a new Section 115.130, anti-harassment policy, OSCCMO, amending Section 115.370.d, administration of the merit system, OSCCMO, amending Section 115.410.b.3.d, appointment, and amending Section 115.460.b, disciplinary action, OSCCMO.
Any questions or comments on this bill? Seeing none, that concludes bills for introduction, and we'll move on to table bills. Is there anything to be removed? Seeing none, then we will move on to announcements and miscellaneous.
I would like to just point out that I wanted to make it to the mall this weekend on Saturday, but I appreciate the fact that we had a county government expo at Mid-Rivers Mall. I understand it went really well, and I thought that was really good. It's a great opportunity. We had many departments of our county that were out there. A lot of people got to interact with folks in our county. So I appreciate everybody who was involved in that. That was a big undertaking, I know, to get everybody out there, and I really appreciate all the county folks who showed up on a Saturday to make time to be available to the citizens. So kudos to everybody who put that together, and well done.
Ditto.
There you go.
I get something.
Mr. Crow.
Mr. Snark can probably give me the correct date, but I want to let people know that the Shriner Circus is coming to the Family Arena pretty soon. And the Shriners, if you're not familiar with them, they run 22 hospitals across the country that treat crippled children regardless of their parents' ability to pay. So it's a wonderful organization. It's a good opportunity to take the kids to see the circus. And quite all over the county, there are places where you can get actually free tickets for the kids if with one paid adult admission. So I know that this grandpa is going to be taking at least one kid to that circus. And
We still have elephants.
Yeah, it's so it's a it's good circus. It's a good deal being able to take the kid for free when you buy a ticket, and it's a great organization to support too. So that's all I
Very
have to
good.
say.
Anything else?
So, not to be the guy who's working for the communications department, but there is a soft skills train the trainer workshop that's coming up at St. Charles Community College in the Science Building in room 1002, and that is happening on Thursday, April 4th from 8 a.m. until noon. Scott, can they find out this information on the county website? Yes, sir. So that information is available at the county website. Is there any cost for that? $20. So $20 will get you in, but it's all about trying to meet the needs of soft skills that are needed today. So it's a great way to get some more information. Go to the website, find out how you can get involved. Awesome price, great course. So encourage everybody to, if you want to get your folks involved or you want to get involved, go to the website and find out how you can do that. So that is on Thursday, April 4th, 8 a.m. until noon. And I have nothing else to promote for the county at the moment, so I would move to dismiss.
Oh, second. We are adjourned. Thank you very much for coming.